Hello, everybody, and a very happy new year to you all. One of the most interesting and one of the most talked about books of 2025 is The Beast Within, a gritty, dark crime fiction set in Delhi. Now, it's a brilliant book that explores the senior side of human nature, that talks about, in deep detail, police procedure, that investigates the nature of crime itself and aspects of evil. It has brought to the fore a brand new star in the crime fiction genre. And we have with us the brilliant writer of this brilliant book, Rudraneil Sengupta. Welcome, Rudran.
Thank you, Shurid, for the wonderful and kind introduction.
Now, let me ask you, you're no stranger to the literary world. I mean, your book, Enter the Dangal, has been widely read and greatly critically appreciated. What made you switch from nonfiction to fiction, and specifically crime fiction?
Um, but crime fiction is something that I've been interested in since I was a child. And, growing up in Kolkata, of course, you read your first Feluda and your first Bomkesh, and you're completely enamored by, I was completely enamored by this hero detective who's the savior and who can see through other people and lies and little details that nobody else can see. And so it fascinated me, that aspect of somebody who who can observe so much and who knows so much about human nature and can extricate the truth from a web of lies and sort of set the social order back again after it has been disrupted by the crime. So that was something I was always interested in as a child, and it had been on my mind that I would like to, in fact, write one day a crime fiction book from when I was very young. But what I realized soon enough is that I don't have the necessary knowledge to actually do it, because I didn't know anything about the world of crime. I had no exposure to police work or detective work or any of these things. What I was exposed to was reading about these in crime fiction novels set in the UK or the US or wherever, and so I knew more about the way police behave or talk in those countries than I read about my own, and I realized that just won't pass muster. So what happened was that I started, when in my journalism career, I started to do more and more stories around crime, and I got more exposed to the world of crime and the world of policing. And as I, got deeper and deeper into that, one of those days I started to realize that, okay, this is the experience that I've always wanted to have so that I can write my own book. And now I'm having it. So it became a very structured thought in my head that I was ready. So now I had a very structured thought in my head that I am going to write a book based on these experiences, and I started taking notes accordingly. And to answer your question about I wrote a nonfiction book and why did I switch to fiction, I read something that was in an interview by this wonderful Japanese crime fiction novelist called Hideo Yokohama, who's a big influence on me. And in that interview, he said that he was a reporter before he started writing crime fiction. And he said that at some point he realized that for all the things that he sees and experienced, writing reportage was not enough to express that reality. So he had to turn to fiction to express that reality in its true way. And that's something I felt as well, that, reportage has obviously a very strict restrictions about what you can and cannot write about and how you can approach something. And I wanted to get rid of those shackles to kind of express everything that I experienced, and as well as my own feelings about things and how to work that into a character and things like that, which is very exciting for me to be able to break free of the chains of nonfiction writing and to get into fiction to kind of convey to the reader the world as I was experiencing it. So that's why.
Why? Now, one thing you were talking about the experience that you had been gathering and accumulating in your career as a journalist. The detail in police procedure and legal procedure is incredible in the book. I have not come across too many books that deal so intensely and so minutely with police procedure. How did that come about? I mean, how did you go about doing that? Did you spend time with cops and did they take you in their cases and how to explain?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I spent a lot of time with police officers as well as other arms of the law or things associated with crime. Um, and I think the first experience I actually had was, and again, these all came through my work as a reporter. So I was parallelly doing reportage for a newspaper while I was exploring these things. And my first contact with all these people and places were through assignments that I had for the newspaper, and I would go and meet them, and I would start talking to them, and eventually, when I knew a person well enough, I would start telling them that, look, I am also going to write a novel based on these experiences. It's going to be a crime fiction novel set in Delhi, based on your experiences, and I would like to record everything that you do, with the assurance that I am not going to publish anything that puts you in trouble. So, and by that time, I had already finished reporting for the story, so I did not have to have that hanging over me. And so they, some of these very kind people allowed me back into their lives and said, sure, come and hang with us. And if you hang with us and you're not a reporter, we have nothing to fear. You can do what you want. And so I was with one police officer in the crime branch, and my inspector is an inspector in the crime branch, and based very much on this police officer that I spent a lot of time with in the crime branch, as well as DCPs, I mean, senior level officers who were very kind, who understood what I was doing. Some people even got excited about the fact that I was going to do this. So, and they allowed me to record in detail everything that they were doing. And I would hang out with no aim in life. So I would just land up in the office where they landed up and spend the rest of the day with them doing whatever they were doing. Whether that was going on a raid to catch gangsters, or just eating lunch, or just sitting in the car, staking out a place, and various different things that they were doing. I even got to see things like autopsies being conducted, and so I was allowed a lot of deep access to the things, and obviously I spoke to them about various different things that I did not understand or know about, and how guns worked, or boring things like how they got reimbursed for fuel. For example, a lot of these people were using, I saw that they were using their private cars, and they often did not have official police cars. And I was like, why does that happen? So they said, okay, if you need an official police car for a raid, you have to send in a requisition. That requisition takes about 48 hours before it goes through all the signatures and comes back to you. And we only know that we need the car when it's like an hour or 2 hours from wherever we are going to raid. So that makes no sense to us. So we take our own car. And so little things like that, which all made its way into my book. So yeah, and that's how I got all the details.
So like most of the bureaucratic, hurdles and the red tape, and, you can see the frustration in many of the characters, like they're just waiting for, just waiting to just get their guns before a raid. I mean, that itself is such a drag for them. But like, how much of the story, how much truth, how much fact and history is there in the story itself without giving anything away?
So this is quite funny that almost everything in the book is true, especially the professional stuff that happens. So the book has, I go very deeply into the personal lives of the officers as well, which comes from my imagination, my experiences as well. But the professional stuff that they're doing, the cases that they're fighting, are all real incidents that I have either experienced myself or have been told to me by the officers, or I have read their case files and seen that. And the only thing that what I've done is that everything is completely decontextualized. So, things happen very differently from how it really happened. But the core of it is true. So, for example, in my book, there is a case of a child being kidnapped that happens some midway through the book.
That becomes a central theme of the book.
Yeah, that became from that point. From that point, absolutely. So this actually comes from a real case about a constable called Seema Huda, who joined the police force, and when she reported to work, after a few days, she realized that her thana had over 200 cases of missing children in the last 6 or 7 months, and none of them had been solved. And when she started looking at the files, she realized that the IO, or the investigative officer, kept changing for each case, sometimes within 2 weeks, sometimes within 3 weeks. Nobody had made any headway in some of these cases. Even a photograph of the missing child had not been collected. And so she went in her personal capacity to her reporting officer and told him that, look, I want to follow these cases. Nothing has been done about these missing children. And since she was a complete rookie, I suppose, the officer said, fine, go ahead, do it in your own time. And so this woman went completely mad. She became obsessed with solving these cases. She spent days and nights at the police thana. And slowly, over a period of 1 month, 2 months, she started to make leads, and she in fact found out who was doing this. Then she made a fake profile of herself on Instagram or one of these places, and then started to follow this man's profile, contacted him, set up a kind of trap for him, and eventually rescued 79 children in just 2 months, which was a remarkable story that I encountered while I was doing my research. And so I knew that had to be there in my book. So everything in my book are things that fascinated me and that I actually encountered in real life.
Wow. Now, talking about the character, Inspector Kumar, talking about so many characters, they are so real, they're so unforgettable. I mean, they're not like, it's not like you need good characters to lead a good crime story. And how did Kumar's character come about? You said it was based on this particular inspector that you were hanging out with. Now, what more did you add to it?
So this was a great fun thing for me to do, actually. Again, coming from
the creation of the character?
Yeah, the creation of the characters was amazing. It was probably the most enjoyable thing I did for the book. And that's because I come from, again, a non-fiction background. So I never get to create characters. In non-fiction, you have to be very, very squarely within the boundaries of what is being said to you by whoever you're interviewed. And so here, like, again, I had complete freedom, which was a lot of fun. And so what I did was, I believe in the tenet that you write about what you know. So obviously all these people I have characteristics that I already know from people around me, whether it's family or friends or enemies, people I dislike actively, but I have had to encounter in my life regularly. And so it was a lot of fun. So, I could make my villain I'd give him a lot of characteristics of, for example, a former boss I did not like. The kind of a car he drove, or the mannerisms and things like that. So I'm like, yes, let's heap all of that into my villain. Similarly with my cop, he has a lot of similarities in personality and the way he talks to the cop I was following. But at the same time, I took his physical characteristics from another person who I met during my reporting days. So this all mixed and matched people of various people I know creates one character. S.I. Meera, for example, who's my favorite character in my own book, because she's a former wrestler. And of course, you know where that comes from, because my previous book was about wrestling. And so I knew so many women like her. And of course, she's very specifically based on a very specific moment. A mix of, maybe, let's say, 3 different women that I know of. And I drew from all the experiences of having spent all these days in akhadas and wrestling training centers and in dangals, and going on these dangal tours with the wrestlers. So all of that experience comes into S.I. Meera's character. So that's how I did it, and it was a lot of fun.
So like the characters Meera, Kumar, Das, they're the kind of characters that, as a reader, I'd like to see them again. But they're kind of characters that I'd like to know what's happening in their lives. You get into their lives as it happens in a good book. So are we going to see more of them?
Oh yes, you're definitely going to see more of them. Though I have been told not to talk about that.
Oh, yeah, I don't want
So
to
I
know.
got
I really just tell me that.
yeah, sure. There is. I mean, they live in my head, and that's the best thing to kind of happen to you as a writer of fiction is when your characters actually start to inhabit you. It may sound a little weird or mad to people who maybe to people who don't write fiction, but I know from talking to other authors that this is because when it first happened to me, I was a little concerned about my own sanity. That I would wake up with all these voices talking inside of me and characters revealing their motivations or what they would like to do. I'm like, "Oof, what is happening?" And then I realized that it's a gift. It's great that this is happening inside of me. It means that I really kind of internalized my characters um, in a way that I wanted to. And then after that, when I spoke to other authors, and they said that it's a wonderful thing when that happens. And so they inhabit in my head, and they talk, and they have things that they are that is happening in their lives that they're doing, and that's all. I take notes copiously. I'm constantly taking notes. Whether if I don't have a notebook, I just open my phone and take notes on an app. So and eventually I use all of these things in my book, in my next book.
This genre is quite a new genre for you, crime fiction. So, how well acquainted are you with, not from your childhood days, but contemporary crime fiction, both from India and abroad? Who are your favorite?
Yeah. So
Writers.
I mean, it's new for me as a writer, of course, but it's not at all new for me as a reader. And I don't really approach things in timelines. Like I don't really know who's contemporary, who's not. I will read whatever comes my way. And I have a lot of writers I love, and the thing that what crime the genre means to me, crime fiction, is that it's less about police work and it's less about crime, and it's more about society. I mean, if you read the great crime novels, are actually it lays bare society as a social structure of a place and a time in great detail, because a crime is basically a disruption in the moral structure, and the crime fiction's job is to kind of restore that order, and in doing that it reveals to you what is important for that society, and what are their priorities and how do they interact with each other as people, what is in their culture. All these things become a part of that journey, and and the city itself becomes or the locality itself becomes a huge part of the journey as well. So you can read Ian Ranking's Inspector Rebus series set in the 90s in Edinburgh, and Edinburgh really comes alive. The music of the time, the streets, the people and the places, and Keigo Higashino does that with Tokyo. Hideo Yokoyama does that with Tokyo as well, and Japanese society as well. I mean, his book 6-4, which is a huge favorite of mine, is like it's like a biblically sized book, and it really deeply, what it does more than anything else is it explores Japanese culture and society, much more than it does anything to do with crime. The Mats Sewall and Per Walu, I don't know if you know of them, are a 60s couple in Sweden who began the Scandinavian crime wave. They were they were both reporters themselves, though not the way we know reporters, because they were also helping give weapons training to armed guerrillas in South America and Africa and things like that. They were left-leaning, very hardcore Swedish journalists, and they were partners, and they would write in a very funny way where one of them would write a chapter at night after work, and the next chapter would be written by the other one the next night, following up from the previous chapter. So I thought it was beautiful. So they have a series of 10 books, Martin Beck, and you read those 10 books and you know everything about Stockholm in the 1960s, everything that's happening, all the new things that are coming into that city, and again, how the city is developing, what people are thinking and not thinking. And I wanted to do the same with The Beast Within with Delhi.
With them.
And I wanted to bring in, and through the different characters, you get a sense of, some people who lived in Delhi at a time when Delhi was very different. You have these older police officers, you have younger police officers who've come from the hinterland, from Haryana, and you have S.I. Das, who's originally from Kolkata, then went to Banaras, and then now in Delhi, and always feels like an outsider in this North Indian world, as Bengalis tend to do. and it gives you that insight into social structures and of a place, and how a place is really. And so so these Keigo Higashino, Ian Rankin,
Kamileri.
Yama, yeah, absolutely amazing.
But then he has a non-fic. No, he has a his place doesn't really exist.
Yeah,
Zigasa, right?
Correct. It doesn't exist, but I mean,
But the culture, that Italian food and culture that exists. I mean, there's so
Right.
much food there.
right, exactly. So you can go any which way with crime fiction, really. To I mean, I think I have a lot of food in my next book as well. So
cool.
because I am interested in food, and I'm like, yeah, let's just put a lot of that in. Different. Again, we have officers from different places and different backgrounds, so everybody can bring in their own food experiences into the book.
That's great.
Yep.
Really looking forward to that one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rudraneil. It was really a pleasure.
It was lovely meeting. Thank you.